She bought her ticket like everyone else. She dressed in power, paid in full, and arrived early. But when the world still sees you as a problem instead of a person, how do you hold back from burning it all down? Let us know in the comments section below. Her heels clicked like a countdown across the marble floor of Atlanta International. Georgina Bamford didn't walk, she commanded. Clad in a sharp navy blazer and matching trousers that cost more than the average monthly rent, her every move was intentional, purposeful, calculated. The terminal buzzed around her, all neon signs and families clutching carry-ons, but Georgina didn't see any of that. She only saw next. The next meeting. The next acquisition. The next 10-year plan blooming in her head like blueprints. She checked her watch. 6:03 a.m. Perfect timing. Her private car had dropped her at the terminal entrance exactly 4 minutes ahead of schedule, just enough time for one thing she always allowed herself: a quiet, controlled first-class boarding experience. No fuss, no announcement. Just her gliding into her seat while the rest of the plane caught up to her world. At gate B27, Georgina offered her ticket to the airline agent behind the podium. He didn't look up. She smiled ever so slightly. "Good morning." Still no eye contact. A subtle microaggression cloaked in plausible deniability. The man, pale, freckled, mid-30s with the breath of someone who drank too much vending machine coffee, scanned the boarding pass slowly. Painfully slowly. Finally he looked up. His gaze didn't meet hers. Instead, it roamed over her tailored outfit like it didn't belong to her. "This is a first-class boarding pass," he said, squinting at the paper as though it might be counterfeit. "It is," Georgina replied, her voice calm, practiced, the voice she reserved for people who assume too little of her and too much of themselves. His lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll need to see ID." She'd flown this airline 53 times in the past 3 years. She knew the policy by heart. ID wasn't required again at the gate if already checked during security, but she handed him her platinum-colored driver's license anyway. He stared at it longer than necessary. "Wait here." The words weren't a suggestion. They were an order, short and sharp, as if she triggered a silent alarm only he could hear, as if existing in her skin while holding a luxury boarding pass was a problem. Georgina stood silently, eyes scanning the gate area. Businessmen in wrinkled suits walked past her without a glance. A white woman in athleisure with an overstuffed Gucci tote gave her a half-step berth, clutching her purse tighter. No one questioned them, but Georgina stood still, on display, like a warning. The airline agent walked toward another staff member, a short woman with a managerial badge and a no-nonsense ponytail. They spoke in hushed tones, glancing back at her twice, then a third time. "They think I stole the damn ticket." It wasn't the first time, but it always stung like the first. A security officer approached now, tall, arms crossed, badge glinting like a threat. "Ma'am," he said, "we're having trouble verifying your boarding credentials." "No," she said, her voice firm now. "You're having trouble believing that someone who looks like me belongs up front." There was a moment of silence. Not long, but long enough for the white woman nearby to pause her scrolling, long enough for someone 3 seats over to start recording. The security guard's expression remained neutral. "We just need to double-check. Please step aside." She could have gone off, could have called it what it was, a blatant, thinly veiled act of discrimination, but that wasn't her move, not yet. Georgina pulled her phone from her leather tote. "Would you excuse me?" she asked, stepping to the side. Not for them, for her. She didn't dial her lawyer, not yet. She didn't even call her assistant. She called herself, in a way. She opened a group contact titled Project Firebird. 4 names, each one a board member of Regalis Airlines. Each one someone who owed her a favor. Each one about to receive a wake-up call before breakfast. But she didn't press send, not yet. She needed to wait for the moment. The moment when her dignity wasn't just bruised but bleeding. The moment the machine showed its teeth. And just like clockwork, it came. "Ma'am, unless you can verify your ticket status and identity, we're going to have to reassign this seat," the manager said curtly. Georgina turned, stared her down. Then she smiled. Not the smile that meant thank you. The smile that meant you just made the worst mistake of your career. She lifted the phone to her ear. "This is Georgina Bamford. Get me Alan," she said. Her tone was calm. Too calm. A pause. Then she added, "And tell him his airline just made itself front-page news." The silence that followed was thick, like the calm that comes just before thunder breaks the sky. The manager blinked. Once. Twice. Like she couldn't process what had just happened. As though Georgina's words had short-circuited some unspoken rule-book that said people like her should just take the humiliation and move on. But Georgina wasn't built that way. Never had been. Across the terminal, a teenager tilted his phone a little higher. The red dot blinked in the corner of his screen. Already recording. Georgina lowered her phone, not because she was done, but because she'd only just begun. "You said you'd have to reassign my seat," she asked, stepping forward, heels quiet but heavy. "You didn't confirm anything. You didn't rescan my ticket. You just made a decision." The manager straightened, pulling at the hem of her blouse like it might make her feel more in control. "We're simply following security protocol. There was a discrepancy." "There was no discrepancy," Georgina cut in, her tone sharp as glass. "There was a decision." The security guard cleared his throat, as if to remind everyone he was still there. "Ma'am, if you'd like to be rebooked—" "Oh, don't you worry," she said, holding up her phone again. "I'm already rebooking your future." The teen with the phone whispered to someone behind him. Two more phones popped up. One woman whispered, "Is she famous?" And another muttered, "No, but she's about to be." Georgina glanced back toward the gate desk. A younger black woman in a red blazer, clearly another airline employee, stood frozen in place. Her eyes met Georgina's for a split second. There was no pity in them, just pain, the kind you only recognize when you've carried it too. Georgina gave her a nod. The woman nodded back. "You know what's funny," Georgina said, addressing no one in particular now, her voice carrying, deliberate. "This isn't even the first time something like this has happened. Last year I was held in customs for an hour because they didn't believe my global entry ID was mine. A week later I was denied entry to a private event because the staff thought I was on the service team. And now here I am, questioned over a seat I paid for, in full, with a corporate card bearing my name." She stepped in front of the desk, set down her carry-on beside her, and planted both feet firmly. You see a black woman and think assistant, girlfriend, fraud. But never CEO, never owner, never someone who could own your entire department and not even blink. The crowd was larger now, quiet, curious. A few heads nodded slowly. One woman mouthed, "Preach." The manager flinched. I don't think this is appropriate." "No," Georgina said coolly. "What's inappropriate is thinking I'd walk away from this quietly. What's inappropriate is training your staff to follow their bias more than they follow your actual procedures." The security guard leaned toward the manager. "You should probably call corporate now." Georgina's phone buzzed. A name lit up the screen. "Alan Ridley, Regulus Board." She answered, not breaking eye contact with the manager. "Alan." A pause. "Yes, it's exactly what it looks like. Gate B27. I was stopped. Again." Another pause. Georgina's gaze flicked down briefly, watching the manager sweat through her collar. "No need for apologies," she said into the phone. "Just make sure everyone hears about this. Publicly." She hung up. For a beat, the air seemed to stall. Then the airline agent from earlier, the one who'd started all of this, approached, face pale and stiff. He held a tablet in his hand like it might shield him from what was coming. We've reconfirmed your boarding pass, he said, barely audible. You're clear to board. Georgina tilted her head. Now I'm clear? Yes, Mama. She looked at him, not just at his face, but into him. Saw the discomfort, the guilt he didn't want to admit. Saw the gears turning as he realized how wrong he'd been, and how much it might cost him. Say it, she said softly. He blinked. Say what? Say you made a mistake. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted around the terminal, searching for rescue, but there was none coming. We may have mishandled the situation, he muttered. Georgina took a step closer. You didn't mishandle a situation, you mishandled a person. You looked at me and decided I didn't belong. The manager stepped in quickly. On behalf of Regalis, I'd like to offer our sincere— Save it, Georgina said flatly. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry I have more power than you thought I did. She turned to the gate. I'll board now, alone. She picked up her bag and walked toward the jet bridge. As she passed the woman in the red blazer, the one who hadn't said a word this whole time, Georgina stopped briefly. What's your name? She asked. The woman straightened. Tamika. You did the right thing staying out of it. But I saw you, Georgina said gently. I'm going to leave a name with your corporate office. Yours. They'll be calling. You're not staying down here. Tamika blinked, then smiled. Small, but real. Thank you, she whispered. Georgina nodded once and walked on. As she stepped onto the bridge, a few people clapped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a performance. It was respect. Back in the terminal, the manager stared down at the tablet, pretending to type. The agent behind the desk looked like he'd seen a ghost. And the teenager with the phone? He just posted the clip with the caption. Black woman gets racially profiled at airport, then shuts down the whole damn airline. It hit 47,000 views before her plane left the ground. The first-class cabin was silent, heavy with the kind of tension money couldn't smooth over. Georgina sat still, perfectly upright in seat 1A. She didn't recline. She didn't remove her blazer. She didn't ask for champagne. Instead, she stared ahead, through the wall, through the curtain separating her from the rest of the plane, through every time in her life she'd been told she didn't belong, and every time she'd fought back anyway. The flight attendant, a young white man with trembling hands, leaned over nervously, placing a neatly folded napkin and a flute of water on her tray table. If there's anything you need, Miss Bamford, he said, we're here for you. She looked up at him, slowly. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in analysis. She could see the fear in him, not just of her, but of what she represented now. Consequence. Thank you, she said. Her voice was level, controlled, but the tension beneath it had a spine. He nodded and left quickly, retreating behind the curtain. She turned her head toward the window. Outside, the tarmac glowed under the sun. Planes taxied like obedient cattle, following paths someone else had drawn. She had never followed paths. She made them. As the plane began to move, Georgina closed her eyes. The hum of the engines wrapped around her like static. She was still calculating, still planning. By the time they were in the air, she already had a mental list of names. People who would want this story. Allies who sat in newsrooms. Friends in government. Quiet hands in high places. People who owed her not just favors, but outcomes. The power wasn't in what had just happened. The power was in what came next. She tapped her screen and opened the document titled Firebird Internal Memo. It had been a placeholder until now, a project name, a maybe. An idea she hadn't decided whether to ignite or bury, but after this morning it was no longer theoretical. Her fingers moved with the kind of speed that only fury could fuel. She wasn't writing from emotion. No, she was writing from clarity. Her mind was sharp, her heart cold, every letter a strike, every sentence a lever. She titled the document, Statement of Intent, Acquisition Proposal, Regulus Airlines. 3 rows behind her, a man whispered something about her name. Another murmured back, "I think she's a tech person or something." They didn't know. But they would. The news broke while she was still in the air. Someone had tagged her official company account in a viral post, then another, then a third. The video was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, a Reddit thread climbing into the thousands. Black CEO denied boarding while holding first-class ticket. CEO exposes racial bias with one call. Regulus Airlines faces firestorm after viral profiling incident. By the time she landed in New York, Georgina Bamford was trending. She stepped off the plane, passed the gates silently, ignored the people's sneaking glances, and headed straight to the car waiting curbside. Her driver, a Dominican woman named Myra, didn't ask questions. She just handed Georgina a hot tea and opened the back door. "Boardroom or office?" Myra asked. Georgina slid into the back seat. "Boardroom." She was already typing again. By the time they reached her midtown high-rise, the fire was already lit. Journalists had begun emailing her team. Cable news anchors were name-dropping her in primetime teasers. The airline issued a generic statement, the kind cobbled together by attorneys trying not to say anything at all. "We are aware of the video circulating online and are investigating the situation. Regulus Airlines remains committed to fairness, diversity, and respect for all passengers." She smirked. Weak. Upstairs, the glass boardroom overlooked the skyline. Georgina walked in without breaking stride. 3 of her senior execs were already seated, Gerard, Lacey, and Kim, and all of them rose when she entered. Gerard cleared his throat. "We just saw the video." "I know," she said, placing her bag on the table. "Sit." They obeyed. "I'm not here to talk about what happened," Georgina said, voice low but commanding. "I'm here to make sure it never happens again." Kim leaned forward. "Are we going public?" Georgina shook her head. "Worse." Lacey arched a brow. "What's worse than public?" "Ownership," Georgina replied. "They'll issue apologies, maybe fire a couple low-level staffers, but it won't change the system. So we're going to buy the system." Silence. Gerard blinked. "You want to acquire Regulus?" "No," she said. "I will acquire them. We'll move through Firebird Holdings, quietly. I want everything by the numbers, discreet bids, proxy moves, buy from the edges in." Kim gave a slow whistle. "Damn." Georgina turned to the window, the city unfolding beneath her like a chessboard. "This isn't just about me. It's about the little girl watching that video, wondering if success can actually protect her. It's about the black woman in Des Moines with a first-class boarding pass and a headscarf. It's about everyone who was told they're lucky just to be allowed in the room." Lacey nodded. "Then let's build the room." Jared stood. "I'll get our legal team briefed. Discretion first, right?" Georgina nodded. "Until it's time to strike." As the team dispersed, Georgina sat at the table, finally letting her breath slow. She didn't want revenge, she wanted reform. And she wasn't going to knock on the door anymore. She was going to buy the building. The press conference was held on a crisp Thursday morning in early spring. Midtown pulsed with its usual rhythm. Horns, hurried footsteps, the smell of roasted nuts from street vendors. But inside the glass lobby of the Atrius Tower, everything was still. Cameras faced a sleek black podium flanked by 2 banners, one with the logo of Firebird Holdings and the other bearing a freshly unveiled name in bold silver lettering, Equiluxair. Reporters murmured, pens poised, mics angled, waiting for the woman whose name had consumed every headline for weeks. The woman who had been humiliated in front of the world and who had responded not with rage, but with restructuring. Then the doors opened. Georgina Bamford stepped out, dressed in a soft white power suit that contrasted sharply with the dark stage. She walked without rush, without apology, There were no notes in her hands. She didn't need them. She took her place at the podium, adjusted the mic once, and scanned the room. A few people straightened under her gaze. One woman in the front row wiped a tear from her eye. A black girl, no older than 11, stood beside her mother in the back, holding a homemade sign that said, CEO Goals. Georgina smiled. Barely. But it was enough to silence the room. "I won't rehash what you already know," she began, her voice firm, her cadence precise. "You've seen the video, you've read the statements, but what you haven't seen and what I'm here to share today is the next step." A pause. Cameras clicked. Over the past 30 days, Firebird Holdings executed a full acquisition of Regalis Airlines through a network of strategic purchases, asset transfers, and proxy partners. As of this morning, the company formerly known as Regalis is under full new ownership and leadership. A wave of gasps swept through the room. One journalist dropped his pen. Georgina let it settle before continuing. "Let me be clear. This isn't about revenge. This is about remodeling a system that was never built for us. This is about rebuilding air travel from the runway up, with equity, dignity, and representation at every level." She turned slightly, gesturing toward the banner. "Introducing Equilux Air, where every passenger is treated like they own the sky." The crowd erupted. Applause, some even standing. Flashes exploded across the room. But Georgina wasn't done. Equilux will be the first major U.S. airline with a board that is majority BIPOC and women-led. Our hiring practices will center equity. Our training programs will include mandatory racial bias education. And most importantly, our leadership will reflect the people we serve, not just in color, but in character. Backstage, Lacey and Gerard watched with pride. Myra stood beside them, wiping her eyes. "She's doing it," Giroux said quietly. She really turned a slap in the face into a seat at the head of the table. "She didn't just take a seat," Myra whispered. "She built a whole new room." When the Q&A session began, hands shot up like fireworks. Georgina nodded at a younger reporter near the front. "Maria Reyes, Morning Wire." "Miss Bamford, how did it feel, personally, when you realized you now owned the very company that tried to deny your existence?" Georgina let the silence stretch for a beat. Then she said, "It felt like the full-circle moment I wish I never had to create. But I did it not just for me. I did it for every person who's ever had to over-explain, over-perform, and overcompensate to justify space they already paid for." Another round of applause. She raised her hand gently to lower the volume. "And I want to make something else clear," she added. "We're not here to shame or destroy. We're here to lead better. The previous employees of Regalis who acted with integrity, they still have jobs. Some of them are getting promoted, but those who clung to discrimination like a safety net, they've already cleared their desks." In the back of the room, Tamika stood quietly. She had flown in from Atlanta the day before. She now wore a silver Equilux name badge clipped to her tailored navy suit jacket. It read, "Tamika Ford, Director of Passenger Experience." When Georgina had called her just a week earlier to offer the position, Tamika had cried so hard she couldn't speak. Georgina had just smiled and said, "Take your time. Your voice matters here." Another reporter called out, "Miss Bamford, what would you say to young black girls watching this moment?" Georgina didn't hesitate. "I'd say your existence is not a disturbance, it's a declaration. Don't wait for permission to take up space. Build the damn terminal if they won't let you through the gate." As the press conference came to a close, Georgina stepped off the stage and into a sea of people reaching to shake her hand, to thank her, to take selfies they'd frame on their desks. But she paused at the edge of the stage, crouched down, and looked the young girl with the CEO Goals sign right in the eye. "What's your name?" Georgina asked. Samira, the girl whispered, wide-eyed. Well, Samira, Georgina said, holding her gaze, next time someone asks what you want to be when you grow up, don't say CEO like it's a dream. Say it like it's a plan. Samira beamed. Her mother cried. Outside, the city moved on. Flights took off. Buses rolled by. People who had no idea what just happened inside that glass lobby continued with their day. But something had shifted. Because now, in an industry long stained by exclusion, one woman had changed the altitude of expectation, not by asking for equality, but by buying the jet. And above it all, one message echoed louder than any apology ever could. This seat was never theirs to give.